Welcome to Ask Gwen, everyone. Today with me I have Jess, and I'm going to let Miss Jess take it away and start sharing her story. So, welcome, Jess.
Oh, thank you, Win. I really appreciate you inviting me on your show. And again, like you said, my name is Jess Arce, and I am the owner and director of Lexia Learners. And dyslexia is my life. And so I never intended that to be my life. But when I had my daughter 24 years ago, I had already had a son who was very gifted in reading and advanced. And then my daughter came along, and she struggled so much to do basic things. When she was 2 years old, she couldn't cut with scissors, and she couldn't draw pictures. And I was a preschool teacher at the time. So I started wondering, what is going on with my daughter? And no one had any answers for me. And so I basically dedicated the next 10 years of my life trying to figure out why she was struggling, what was going on in her life. And we put her in a special public school that my son was in, and that was not a good fit for her. And then I pulled her out of school and I tried homeschooling, but I didn't know what I was doing, and I really messed that one up. So my husband said, put her back in school. So we put her back in school, and the teachers told me to hold her back. And so we held her back because I didn't know any better back then. And then we put her in private school, hoping private school would help, but none of those things helped. And so when she was in second grade, I was friends with her teacher, and I asked her teacher what she thought was going on. And her teacher's like, oh, she's better than the other kids. And I'm like, Now, years later, I realized her teacher was talking about her ADHD was better than other kids because my daughter could control that, which most kids can't control their ADHD anywhere, but she could.
So, most adults, I have a friend who has ADD, and
Uh,
she'll admit she'll admit it, and I swear she's admitted it, but she doesn't have a filter. ADD and ADHD, they don't have a filter.
Well, I have ADHD myself, and I work very hard on filtering. But yeah, it's hard. We have to think. We have to learn these skills. But yeah, my daughter, she could control her ADHD in school, no problem. So anyway, we didn't have any answers. And then we moved to Texas. And we had only been in Texas 1 week when her teacher told me she's dyslexic. I was like, oh, that makes sense. My mom had been diagnosed with dyslexia in the 40s. My mom was a teacher. My mom had no clue what dyslexia looked like in people either. So, so my daughter started getting help the next year, and it was Orton Gillingham based help. And then my son, a couple of years later, my youngest son started school, and he was struggling in school, and he had a new teacher. She was her first year teaching, and she said, well, he's having trouble. I think we should do a whole bunch of testing. I said, you know what? He's probably dyslexic too. Let's test him for dyslexia. So in Texas, they were very advanced, and so they tested my son as well, and he started receiving dyslexia services a year earlier than they typically would because I was a very active part of the community. I volunteered at school all the time, and they knew my daughter was dyslexic.
Yeah.
So he started getting help early on with his reading and spelling and writing. But then we decided we were leaving Texas and moving back west, and I was going to homeschool the kids because the schools weren't as good back west. So so my son's dyslexia teacher said, you need to learn how to help your son. Well, since I was going to homeschool anyway, I figured why not um, do what he needs. So I got trained in an Orton Gillingham based program so that I could help my son. And then we were at a homeschool class, and I was talking to a mom one day, and her daughter was in 6th grade and her daughter couldn't read. And she was telling me about it. And I said, that sounds like dyslexia. So I started tutoring her daughter, and her daughter started learning how to read. So then she told a friend, and the friend, her dyslexia was nowhere near as severe as my kids or my students my student was, but she wanted to be an actress and she needed to be a stronger reader, so I started tutoring her. So lo and behold, my business, tutoring kids and adults with dyslexia, dysgraphia, and dyscalculia, started. And so now my whole life is dedicated to A, educating people about what dyslexia is, and B, being able to help as many students and kids and adults as possible. Because unfortunately, so many people think dyslexia is just reversing letters or numbers, and that's not what dyslexia is.
Okay, that's my
That was
that's my next question. What Because what I've been told over the years, and I have a learning disability too, so I know all too well about learning disabilities, like, because of my CP. And I am wondering, has have I been told about dyslexia in the wrong way? Just educate me and slash educate my listeners, because I was always told dyslexia was reading backwards, and I'm like, that doesn't make sense to me. So what is it? What are we dealing with here?
Yeah. So at first, I'd like to address the backwards thing. So only about 25% of dyslexic people have reversal issues beyond maybe B and D. And that really is a different component that often is associated with dyslexia. That's usually actually a visual impairment, and not one that they'll find that a regular optometrist would find. It's not something that they'll see in a vision test. But when you go to a vision therapist, they help with those kind of issues. But dyslexia, um, dyslexic people can be great readers, which is one thing that most people don't realize. And so if their child doesn't struggle with reading, they just assume it's not dyslexia, but it can be, because dyslexia means difficulty with words. So that can mean difficulty saying words, difficulty spelling words, difficulty reading words. Okay, so it's a broad spectrum of what it can fall under. And then I'm just going to mention the other two disses, and then I'll tell you all about the characteristics, because they pretty much present themselves in all three. So the other one that's starting to become more known is dysgraphia. And graphia means writing. So dys means not. So dysgraphia is difficulty with writing. And very often that means that they have illegible handwriting, but it can also mean that they can't get their thoughts down on paper. And then the third dys is dyscalculia. And calculia, or calc, is math, right? So we have a
Yeah.
calculator. That comes from the Latin prefix. So dyscalculia means difficulty with math. And so people with dyscalculia have difficulty understanding math concepts, remembering the functionality, the order of math. And people with dyscalculia And even people with dyslexia very often can do pretty well in geometry because that's shapes, but they don't do well in algebra because that's arbitrary information. And dyslexic people, and when I say dyslexic, I mean all three, but I typically just use the word dyslexia. But dyslexic people have difficulty with arbitrary information. That's why it may be hard to remember your address or your phone number or the order of the alphabet because there's no logic to it, to the brain. They don't understand, why do I need to remember this? I'm not going to tell you my passwords, but I have very logical passwords because that makes it easier for me to remember because I too am dyslexic. So that's the number one thing. Dyslexia is hereditary. So if you are dyslexic, most likely 50% of your children will be dyslexic. And turns out both my husband and myself are dyslexic. So 3 of our 4 children ended up having dyslexia. The one that doesn't have dyslexia still has characteristics of dyslexia. So he still struggles, but he's the one I mentioned at the beginning who was reading on an 8th grade level in 2nd grade. So he obviously doesn't have difficulty with reading, but he's a slower reader. Dyslexic people will very often mix up their sounds and their syllables in words. They'll switch them around. They may stutter. Very frequently, they confuse their left from their right, up, down, top, bottom. Late at establishing a dominant hand. My husband actually is ambidextrous. He can do everything with both of his hands except for right. He writes with his left hand and he can paint a room with his left and his right hand at the same time. I tried that. It's really hard to do.
Yeah.
Difficulty with rhyming words. I just did an intake with a set of twins earlier this week, and they're 15, and they both struggled with rhyming words. Slow, choppy handwriting, hard to read. Sometimes they can't even read their own handwriting.
I can't, you guys. I can't read my own handwriting to save my life. And my handwriting, I wish I had a piece of paper to show you, Jess. My handwriting is terrible. My handwriting, due to my learning disability, is terrible. I mean, I'm like, I can't write to save my life.
Yeah, well, so now that's at least one characteristic that you've mentioned. If we find 2 more, say you're probably
Uh,
dyslexic. Um, so a lot of times kids who have reversal issues, they will be encouraged to use cursive because you cannot reverse your letters in cursive. However, a lot of dyslexic people can't write in cursive. So there's no one size fits all struggle. We just often have 3 or more characteristics. So slow, choppy, inaccurate reading is a very common characteristic. But like I said, some dyslexics are amazing readers. I had a student once who he had to slow down when he was reading because he read faster than I could follow along. And then very, very frequently, dyslexics will guess a word based on the shape or the context, the first and the last letter of the word. And they're totally wrong on what the word is because they didn't actually read the word. They just looked at it quickly and then guessed. And they often mix up prepositions like at, the, of, what, to, from, those kind of words. They ignore suffixes altogether. They can't sound out unknown words. They're horrible spellers. That is probably the biggest common denominator with dyslexic people is having trouble spelling. So if you're taking a test, if your child is taking a test in school and they study for their spelling test, and they do great on the spelling test that Friday, but then 2 weeks later, maybe they're doing a review of all the spelling words for the month, and they can't remember any of the words that they had memorized. They don't even recognize them. They may not even remember that they ever looked at those words. And you're like, what the heck? We spent hours studying that. So so that's a huge indicator, is spelling. Sight words are hard to remember. Homonyms like there are confusing.
Y- Yes, I can't remember which there now I'm admitting all my faults. I can't remember which there goes where half the time. No, I'm dead serious, and autocorrect on text message doesn't help, and speech to dictation doesn't help either. And I'm like, oh boy, oh boy. And I'm a journalist, so I can't remember my homonyms.
Yeah.
Sheesh.
Okay. So now we got two characteristics. We're almost
Oh,
there.
oh boy.
But it's okay. It's okay.
Oh boy.
That's one of the things. It was such a relief to finally have a label to put on my daughter. Like
Yeah,
nothing had changed at that very moment except for we knew what we were dealing with. And that makes life so much easier. And you're not alone when you know that it has a label, right?
yes.
So I'm all the way done with the list, but difficulty telling time on an analog clock, which these days people don't have to do that very much. Memorizing multiplication facts is really hard, and memorizing a sequence of steps in order to do your math problems or in order to do your chores or what someone asked you to do. Like if they ask you, go make your bed, pick up your clothes, and put your clothes away in the laundry hamper or the dresser. And your kid comes back downstairs and all they did was make their bed. And you go upstairs and, why are all the clothes still out? I didn't remember. And then we get mad at them. But it's not their fault. They really didn't remember. They couldn't remember all of those steps. So again, when we understand why, we're a little bit more forgiving. So then they have difficulty finding the right word to say, and often say whatchamacallit and thingamabibble, and common sayings and phrases come out slightly off. And then they have an extremely messy bedroom, backpack, desk, or they dread going to school, doing homework, doing schoolwork. They may complain of stomach aches or headaches because they don't want to go to school. They have nightmares about going to school because it's so stressful. The teachers are yelling at them because the teachers think they're not trying. Their classmates are teasing them because their classmates think they're dumb, and they know they're not dumb, but they don't understand why they can't do basic things that other kids can do. And so very often these kids, especially the ones who have profound issues, they'll just drop out of school in high school because it's like, what's the point? Why try? Why should I be here? So that's pretty much the signs of the 3Ds in a nutshell. Did you notice a third one that you feel relates to you, resonates?
I I did, and I admit that I can't remember. Am so I have to tell myself, okay, step by step by step. I can't I have a great memory. I can remember a conversation
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks from now, but I can't remember what I am doing. I get so distracted that I can't remember what I'm doing. And so when a person asks me a question, I literally have to look at them and say yes, because I can't remember what I'm doing.
So I take notes so I can remember things. I have sticky notes all over my computer right now so that I can remember what I want to talk about, what I want to ask you, because I can't count on my memory to remember those kind of things.
So maybe I should do maybe I should do sticky notes on my computer
Yeah. And
because I can't remember I can't remember half the stuff I can remember, but I can't.
right. You know what you want to say, but then at that moment, it's like it's gone.
Yeah, exactly.
And
So,
sorry.
yeah. So I was going to say sticky notes may be a great idea. A full-fledged wall calendar may be a great idea too. But I have phobia. I have communication apprehension. I know that because of a TBI. So that's part of my TBI, but me not I have a great memory, but short-term memory is not good.
Exactly. Yes. And another great trick that I have been using for about a year now is Trello. Are you familiar with Trello?
Yes.
Well, that's like my sticky notes. And I love it because I can write notes on my phone, I can write notes on my laptop, I can write notes on my desktop, and then I can see them wherever I am. So that was like the best discovery that I had last year was Trello.
Yeah. So, yeah, people need visual. I need audio. I need audio. And so how do people do it with dyslexia? Do they like audio or is audio out the door for them?
So, there's three different learning styles that exist. There's auditory, there's kinesthetic, and there's visual.
Yeah.
So all of us are going to have one primary skill that is our natural learning skill or ability, and then we usually have a secondary. So for me, I am kinesthetic. So that's why I write notes for everything because that helps me remember things. Even if I never look at the note again, I will have a better chance of remembering. And my second one is visual. So if I see things, that will help me remember it. However, because I am not a quick reader, I tend to not read a lot of books. So I have turned to audiobooks in the last couple of months to help me read books quicker. And I love, like the Kindle, you can look at the book while you're listening to it. Because there was a phrase that I have been saying wrong my whole life. And when I heard how they said it, I then looked at the book and I was like, holy cow, that's a 2-word thing. It's not even one word. And I think it was all beta or something like that, which that's not how you say it. It's like all something. Anyway, so most dyslexic people do benefit from audiobooks because
Okay.
even if auditory is not their primary learning skill, it releases us from having to struggle to read.
Yeah.
And reading is one of the best ways to increase your vocabulary, much better than watching a movie is.
Yes. Well, I am amazed by that people with dyslexia could do well with audiobook. Now, you guys remember we all have all different learning styles. I'm 100% audio. I if just asked me this when what was our conversation in about 2 weeks, I could remember that just mentioned audio, and I could go on and on and on. And I actually scared some. I said, "Well, didn't you mention that about a year ago?" And she goes, "When? Now you're scaring me. Now you're scaring me because my memory is I could recall stuff like this 2 seconds, like every 2 seconds. I am the creative type and I know it and everyone else knows it too. And so how are people doing doing it as far as creativity or people with dyslexia or dysgraphia or the mathematics one, which I
Just
can't pronounce now, um, uh, people doing how can they do it and be creative?
So, people with the 3 Ds are usually very creative people because we are right-brained people, right? So, there's a balance in everything in life. And so dyslexic people are often struggle with the technical aspects but are very creative. So you're great actors, athletes, musicians, CEOs, entrepreneurs. We the greatest ones are likely dyslexic, like Charles Schwab or Steve Jobs or Richard Branson and Mike Magic Johnson and oh, I'm drawing a blank on all the names. I should write all those down so I can just say them. But yeah, all of them are really gifted in the areas of creativity. So that's a strength we have.
Well, good. At least you have a strength counterbalance the weakness. Now, what is one stigma, Jess, that you want to break publicly on this podcast?
Um, that dis- the stigma that people think that dyslexic people are not bright. And dyslexic people are typically of average or above average intelligence. Like Albert Einstein, he was kicked out of school at age, I think it was 7. Um, he was sent home, and his mom was told that he wasn't teachable and don't even bother with him. Now, would anyone say that about Albert Einstein today? Nope.
That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing that Albert Einstein was dyslexic and he was bright, and that's a good stigma to break because people think people with cerebral palsy are dumb dumbs, and we're not. We're
Uh-huh.
not. So it's like, no, we all get these labels stuck on us, and then we all people automatically assume that we are labels.
Right. Yeah. And the thing about Albert Einstein and most dyslexic people is that they need to be taught differently. That is the key. And school doesn't do that. School teaches one way. And if you are not that kind of a learner, then you're just going to end up at the bottom of the academic barrel. And
Yeah.
of my 4 kids, only one of my 4 kids thrived in the traditional educational system. The other 3 were not they were not that kind of a learner.
And I'll admit to you guys, I am not, well, I'm not failing my classes, but I am not thriving in my journalism degree. I'm doing extremely well for what I have got here, but I'm not. I I hate my journalism degree. I want it done so quickly, you guys, because, and I'll admit that, because I don't like the traditional education system. Never have, never will, never, ever, ever, never, ever, ever, as a teacher, as a student, as a, no, never, ever, 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 ever. And I think people with learning disabilities like dyslexia or dysgraphia or the mathematics one will always hate school.
You know, and you use the term learning disabilities. I hate that term because it's not a disability. It's a difference. We just need to learn
Well,
differently. And I'm not saying anything against you. I mean, that is what it has been coined as the term for us who
yeah,
learn differently, right? But
yes.
but you know, we have strengths. We're just different.
Yeah, we're just different. So, just as we wrap this interview up, do you have any questions for me?
Yeah. So I was wondering what your driving force was to not let CP hold you back and instead it empowered you.
Well, it's taken me a little while to get in power, and um, my driving force is educating you guys about disabilities. My driving, and when I say you guys, my fan base, my driving force is educating people about disabilities. And I will do this until the day I die. And I will be in a different location doing it, but I will keep on educating people about disabilities.
That's awesome. Yeah, because if we educate people, then there'll be less prejudice in the world, right? Because prejudice stems
Oh,
from
yes.
understanding.
Oh, yes.
My next question is, what drove you to start a podcast?
I wrote a book, and then that book led to me sharing my story and me starting a podcast of my own.
Awesome. So that was your way of being able to share it with the world, huh?
Yes, yes. Share my book with the world. Yes.
And what recommendations do you have for people wanting to start their own podcast?
Consistency, consistency,
Hmm.
consistency. And I would say to all the people out there with dyslexia listening, thank you very much. Now I have a brand new fan base that I didn't even know I had. And so I would say to swing back to creativity, you be the creative force and get help to do the technical end of it, because you be the creative force. You get you get to be the creative force, then a walk away. So you can get help. You Yeah.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
consistency is an area that I am working on improving
Yes, consistency. Consistency. So where can people find you, Jess, and where can people find your company?
Well, we're very active on Facebook. And I, of course, have a website. My website is lexialearners.com, and I'm so excited. I just purchased dyslexiapro.com, so I will be linking that to my website soon because that's easier to remember, right? As long as you can spell dyslexia. and and I really enjoy connecting with people. So my first step is a free call. And that people can do by going to bit.ly/capital LEXIA, capital LEARNERS, capital CALL, and schedule a call with me. You can also find that on my website, so you don't have to memorize that link. But yeah, and so we provide tutoring services for children and adults, and then small group classes for homeschoolers. And now that COVID has hit, we are virtual 100%. So we can help people virtually anywhere. We're not isolated to just California anymore. So I love
Yeah.
that. We can help people everywhere.
Yeah, and I know you're in Nevada, but you can help people everywhere because of the pandemic. And I appreciate you guys listening. I hope you learned a thing or two about dyslexia. I certainly did. I will never, ever, ever look at the dyslexia population the same again after Jess came on and educated me. See, she has to educate another educator because I didn't know. I was the dumb that said, "Oh, there's a person that reads backwards." Oh, never mind. I did not know that there's three different types. I did not know that you. Well, I knew you could be bright, but I did not know that you're terrible readers and terrible spellers and all that good stuff. No, see, Jess has to educate me, and
Mhm.
yeah, we all have to educate each other. And I thank you guys for listening, and I will catch you guys next week, and I will catch you guys later. And I hope you guys enjoyed another fabulous episode of Ask Win. Thanks to you guys. Bye, you guys.
Thanks, Win.